just generally, can you walk us through your experience and your race at the Marathon Project?
Yeah, I mean, so much kudos goes out to the race organizers, Ben Rosario and the other guys that were really involved with that, because they really stepped it up for us, especially in the elite world. We and the people outside of the US that are looking for Olympic qualifiers, because obviously with the world situation, there's not a lot of racing going on, and especially a lot of certified races going on. So overall experience was next to none. I mean, they dogged their I's and crossed their T's with everything. They certified the race, got it World Athletics certified, and had all the timers out there, miles marked to the seemed like centimeters. So everything was really well laid out, and I feel like they did as much as they could to also make it a safe event, because obviously that is a very key thing in the world right now. And yeah, I mean, prep went as expected. I was up in Flagstaff for about 5 or 6 weeks or so beforehand, and then went down to Phoenix the week before. And yeah, I mean, it was just amazing having 50 guys that were, I don't know what the slowest PB was, but obviously they had some debut guys like me, but it was probably sub 220. So having 50 guys that were sub 220 in one race it's almost kind of unfathomable to me. So it was just a great experience to introduce me to the event and the distance. And yeah, it was just great to be out there and run with such great guys, and also have the other three Canadian guys in there also with similar goals of making that Olympic team. It was a good sense of camaraderie, and yeah, I was really excited about it, and it turned out really well. And I couldn't thank them enough for putting on the event in these times.
Okay, so my next question here is, you ran 2:10:17. I forgot about it when I was introducing you. 2:10:17, and you finished eighth. So it was a pretty boring course, and as you said, it's for I imagine to run. Not that you have as much time as I do when you're running a race like that to look at the scenery. But as you're coming down that finishing straight, it looked really long on TV. Like Sarah Hall, it looked incredibly long when she was trying to come down that, searching for the American record. But what's going through your head where you see the clock and you're going to get the standard? Like what was that feeling like? And especially knowing that you passed the other Canadian guys, or they had dropped off the group, so you knew you were kind of in pole position.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of it is kind of a blur, but I remember I'm going to say probably, don't get me wrong, marathon's a very dangerous sport because things can turn on a dime really quick. So I was definitely really focused on just keeping control and keeping as composed as possible in those last few miles. But I'm going to say about 5K to go, I was confident I was going to get under Olympic standard. I didn't know how much, because like I said, you never know how much you're going to blow up. And those last 6 miles are really, really when the race starts kind of a thing. So I was confident I would get under standard, but I didn't know how far under Tristan's time, or if I would get under Tristan's time. So it was really a matter of staying composed. But yeah, coming down that final stretch, like you said, it was pretty long. They had the guy that measured the course is one of the gentlemen that like measures the Olympic course and stuff. So he sent us like the distance from the corner to the finish to like the nearest 10 centimeters, something like that. I don't even remember what it was, but I'm going to say it was like 400 or so, 300 maybe. So yeah, it was a decent amount of time when you turn the corner. So I was just focusing on not falling, because that would have been the absolute worst case scenario, something stupid like that. So for me, it was just a matter of keeping focused and getting to the line. And I honestly the course was interesting because they had like the roundabout turns with maybe a mile or 2 miles to go before the finish. So I did kind of see where the other guys were, Rory and Cam behind me, but I couldn't really gauge how far they were. So I was just really focused on making sure they didn't catch me as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things going through my head, but definitely excited that I was able to put it together on the day, and elated that I was able to put all the work together, and on the day it just all came together and proved that a lot of the sacrifice was worth it, and definitely needed to sit down after the race.
So you mentioned those roundabout turns, and I was talking to Dylan Wykes before. He's my former coach, and I was talking to Dylan Wykes, and he said, "Oh, it's going to be really fast. I think all the Canadian guys are going to get it." And then he looked at the course, and he said he saw those turns that are basically roundabout turns, that he said, and he said, "Oh, never mind. Half of them are going to be walking around those turns by the end." Did those prove as a difficulty? Because obviously you had to kill off all your momentum and get back up to speed again going around those.
Yeah,
or were they not that
it's
tight?
interesting because, like, in my head, when I heard roundabout turns, I actually pictured like an actual roundabout, like one you'd see in a regular residential area, but it was more of a dead end with a little median in the middle that had like one of those turnarounds. I call it more of a turnaround. Okay. So it was a little bit tighter than I expected, but the course, the guy who measured the course did put out a little bit of a tangent to make it kind of the speed route, if you will, or if you follow that line, it's kind of the quickest route to do. That was a little bit of annoying right at the beginning of the race, especially in the bigger group, because some people take the turns differently. Some people go slower around there. Some people are more cautious. So it was a little bit annoying, but to be honest, they weren't that big. So it was a matter of, it was probably 3 seconds and you're around the corner. So it wasn't too much of a hassle, but I think more mentally than anything, it's a matter of, you get to the end, you turn around, you just got to keep going. So it's a matter of just not thinking that you're at the end of a course or something like that. You just have to just follow the turn and keep going, not lose any momentum, especially mentally. I think that was the biggest thing I tried to focus on.
Okay, Steve Ward from Milton, he pointed that out on Strava, wants to know about your strategy during the race. So he asked a bunch of questions. So what was your strategy generally? And we kind of noticed it from when we were watching the broadcast. I noticed you weren't, for most of the time, you weren't right in the middle of the pack or leading the pack like Cam was. You were kind of sitting at the back. Was there anything to that? And then he really was impressed with, as they began to accelerate, maybe I think in the second half, you let the gap go, but you didn't slow. You personally didn't slow at all. So how did you, A, what was your strategy going in? Was that what you intended to do? And then B, how did you let that gap go so controlled? Because I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do, is let a second or two, a kilometer go, as opposed to let the gap really open.
Yeah. The plan all along was to go with that top group. The paces were going out in 2:09 flat, which obviously based on training and in our head, that was obviously a little bit too fast, but it was either go out in 2:09 flat pace or go out in 2:11:30 pace. So for us, it just made sense to go out with that faster group, especially I had a hunch that Cam and Rory were going to go with them anyways, and Justin as well. So it just made more sense to keep in contact with all them. And I was fairly confident that I could handle that pace for quite a long time. So yeah, going out with that front group was always the strategy. And for me, I really lucked out. I think my race tactics would have changed quite a bit if the weather wasn't as perfect as it was, because there was virtually no wind. And it was a beautiful day out and everything. So for me, like I said, sometimes in those roundabout turns and some of the corners and grabbing the bottles, the group would kind of ebb and flow, which naturally happens, obviously, when you're running in a group. I just found that really annoying personally. So that's why I just stepped off maybe 10, 20 meters off the pack. And I just wanted to run my own race. So I just didn't want to have to feel like I was going 455 flats, stuff like that. I didn't want to feel like I was yo-yoing. And so I might have been the one yo-yoing. I don't really know, but it was just, for me, I would sometimes catch the back of the group and they would gap me a little bit. And it was just like, I was just going with the flow and just running my own race. Especially, there was no need for me to be right shoulder to shoulder with the top Canadian guys on, mile 5, because we still have 21 miles to go, So that was kind of the way I approached it. And especially with it being my first one and doing a lot of my training solo, I didn't want to be stressed out getting my nutrition bottles and everything. Like with you got, I think there was maybe 20 guys in that front pack for the first half of the race even. So when we're all grabbing bottles at the same time, it was a bit chaotic and stuff like that. So just being off there, having my own peace of mind and completely running my own race was a really important thing for me. And like I said, I was able to do that because there wasn't any win penalty or anything like that on me. So that was the strategy and how I played it out tactically. And then, yeah, the last, basically I wanted to just stay within striking range of them. If something did happen, I wanted to be able to make sure I could see Cam and see Rory at the beginning. So, the gap kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit, and I was always able to see Rory and Cam. I think Rory maybe fell off the group a little bit earlier than Cam. And so it was just a matter of staying in contact. And I didn't really see Cam until maybe mile 20 or 22, something like that. So, in terms of, controlling that gap, I think it was just important for me to just run my own race. I was very confident in running, 4:55 to 5 flat miles for at least 20 to 22 miles. I knew in my head I could do that from previous training. So I wasn't too focused on, what place I was or how far off the group I was. And I think that was important for me, especially in my debut, to not be so stressed out about all the minute things, because it is such a long race. And I feel like you can really drain yourself mentally if you're always focusing on that. So for me, it was just a matter of always looking up and making sure I was in contact, because, running under Olympic standard was obviously the main goal. But then, if I was the third Canadian to cross the line and under Olympic standard, it doesn't really do much for me. So, obviously under Olympic standard and then within the top two Canadians was the A goal. And then obviously Tristan set a pretty good standard for us as well. So I guess that was kind of another A goal as well, was, optimally it would be kind of what I did was under Tristan's time and top Canadian.
So from what I gather, it was more, mostly we hear Canadians, except for the Canadian Marathon Championships, it's, Canadians are trying to work together in order to better their times. But in this situation, it was really a race within a race, like in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all had that sense of, we obviously all knew what our goals were, and everyone on that line, Justin, Rory, and Cam all want to make that team. And there's only 2 spots left, and Tristan set a pretty good bar for us. So, I might be, no, I don't want to speak for them, obviously, but I'm almost certain everyone had that same process of thought where, we all, obviously there's a pretty hard set time of 2:11:30 by the Olympic committee. So that was obviously the A goal, and then there's only 2 spots left. So I think it was really good that we were able to key off each other, and it was great being able to see familiar faces in the race. And I was totally rooting for them. I wanted those guys to run fast. Elevating the marathon scene in Canada only helps for all of us. So they've got a couple months here that I don't doubt for one second that those guys are going to pop off. And there's some other guys too that are definitely looking to run fast. And like I said, I want to maintain my spot as much as I can, but elevating the marathon scene in Canada only helps all of us. So I'm rooting for all of them.
What's the best piece of advice that you've received from a fellow Canadian marathon or coach? Like going into the race, what was the best piece of advice? Or the one that stuck in your head the most?
Yeah, a lot of my cues came from my coach, Rich. He's got a lot of experience with the marathon and coaching and also racing himself. And so, he sent out an email to me, just kind of detailing different checkpoints within the race, different mile markers, and how I should be feeling. And if I'm not feeling this way, then what my mental process should be to deal with that, or how I adjust my goals, how I adjust my paces. So there's, you you can go forever with different scenarios. So I'm not saying we tackled every single scenario or anything like that, but it was more of how to deal with that mentally and take it and trust the training and trust your body. Because one of the biggest things he said to me was, you know, if I adjust my pace halfway through the race, for example, that does not mean that I'm giving up on my Olympic dreams, you know? So for him, it was more just being rational and being understanding that taking a step back for 5K in the middle of the race just means that you're not going to blow up at the end of the race, you know? So it's like almost understanding that preemptively stepping back a little bit will allow you to save seconds, if not minutes, off the back end of the race. So it is a really interesting mindset in the marathon of it's a really long-term approach. And that is very different than, you know, what you do for a track race in university or something like that, where it's, you know, if you only race in a 5K, you're racing less than 15 minutes or whatever. You don't have to think so much about that. Or if you do think about that, usually it's almost too little, too late kind of a thing. So it is a very different mindset that I obviously want to develop as I continue with my marathon career.
Great. Okay, so just a couple more questions on the marathon project. What was it like to race during COVID? For me, I watch TV nowadays and I see a big group of people and I go, oh no, none of them were wearing masks. And so you were in this group and obviously everyone's been tested and I probably would feel safe in that environment as well. But what was that experience like? Obviously you probably haven't raced in a while. So was there almost a certain air about the race where it was, this is our only shot, or was there, or did you have a mindset going in like, oh, this could be risky?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's risky. There's an inherent risk of doing anything in a group right now. I think that within the race, they followed the guidelines that the USATF released according to the CDC guidelines and all that stuff. So, you know, we had to get tested multiple times during the week and make sure we self-reported during on race day and the week beforehand. So there's a lot of different protocols and stuff, and also we're all wearing masks if we were inside and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you know, there's obviously inherent risk, and it's not like, you know, we were all shoulder to shoulder in a big pack, and yeah, we were outside, but obviously that's a pretty risky endeavor. But for me, it was just a matter of limiting as much of it as I can, and then, you know, I was just trying to be responsible, but also take advantage of the situation. So yeah, it's an interesting aspect, because obviously going into the race, who knows when the next marathon is. I really feel for some of the guys that are looking for more races, and, you know, we're keeping our options open and in terms of what's next, but it definitely helps me mentally to know that I don't have to run another marathon if I can't find one, or can't get in one, or I think it's too risky to travel or anything like that. So there's a lot of relief that comes with hitting it on the head when it counted, kind of thing. So I tried not to focus on that, because that does add a lot of pressure to the race. But definitely afterwards, it was a big elation that, you know, the risk that I took going to the States and training in the States and all that kind of thing played dividends, and I was able to capitalize on it when it was available to me.
Great. Okay, so we have a couple questions on Instagram about your training and race experience. So Austin wants to know how you fought against chafing.
Oh,
do you have any tips?
I used a hefty amount of petroleum jelly. I was getting a lot of issues. One of my workouts, I've worn my flats for several months, but for some reason, one workout was probably just the dryness in Arizona. It ripped up my heel a little bit. So I had quite a bit of a blister on my Achilles on my heel. And I found that if I just lathered Vaseline on my heel before I put my socks on, it really helped. So I I heavily Vaselined my heels and armpits and anywhere that would be rubbing. Yeah, so that was my biggest thing. I don't know if I needed it, but I definitely used it as a little bit of a safety barrier, I guess.
I remember my first marathon. I had no idea what I was doing. Anyway, I got to the line, didn't put on anything, and I was walking around like this for the next 3 days because I didn't want to touch anything. Anyway, I use Body Glide, Austin. It's also very good, but it's more expensive than Vaseline. So
I just had I lucked out. I had a little travel one. It fits in the bag. It's not conspicuous. It's just out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So it is what it is.
Okay, Nathan on Strava wants to know what marginal gains initiatives that you have done, that you did going into it, or that you want to do now after a marathon. So he gave a few examples, such as altitude tents, frequent massage, sports science fueling, etc.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects in running that you can better yourself in. It's kind of that. I kind of take an approach of that, that 10% rule, or if you look at every single aspect in running and you can get better at it only 10% in each aspect, that's going to compound and exponentially make you better. You don't have to nail it every single time. And I think running is a very big learning process. But for me, yeah, I was able to take advantage of altitude because the race was in Phoenix. So I was just up in Flagstaff for 5 weeks, and I took advantage of that, and I feel like that does help. I've only done, I did 1.5 marathon builds, I guess, because I did a build before London before it got canceled, and that was also in Flagstaff. So my only 2 data points right now for marathon builds are really at altitude. Although I guess half or so of the build for the marathon project was done here locally in Ontario. So I really do like altitude. I've never tried an altitude tent or anything like that, just the real deal kind of stuff. But obviously that comes with a price and very location specific. So that's a tough one. But in terms of other marginal stuff, I feel like for me, consistency in training is a really big thing. And that comes with so many different things. That comes with, injury prevention, because missing a workout here and there isn't the end of the world, but it's the consistency aspect of it that I really find important. So injury prevention is a really big thing. And that spirals out in terms of whether you're using, just a personal foam roller or stretching, or you're using an RMT or Chiro, whatever it is. So I try and use a little bit of everything and a little bit in moderation of everything. And that is kind of my motto, is just, everything in moderation and trying to just get better in every aspect a little bit. And I feel like if you do that, you're always going to hit that next level and look for different ways to learn and develop your body. So that is the approach that I take in life and also in running.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing with your friends and on social media. Take care, and we'll see you next time.